confident that the fine for public drunkenness and disturbing the peace will be paid with no questions asked, like it is nearly every 2 or 3 months, Morrisseau tells the magistrate to call his art dealer in Toronto. Little does he know that this time the law is a black-robed man who has seen far too many Skid Row casualties to his liking. He has heard of the famous Morrisseau, has read about him in the Globe and Mail, has seen his photograph in Maclean's magazine, and he cannot believe that the bloated booze hound in front of him is the same man. He asks Pollock, his agent, not to spring bail. He tells him Morrisseau needs to dry out before he kills himself. He's been drinking daily non-stop for over a month, feeding off the liquor like it was food. Torn by indecision, Pollock reluctantly agrees, and Morrisseau is promptly locked up for 6 months, his longest confinement ever. Later, Pollock will admit that his actions reeked of paternalism, but he saw no alternative, save let Morrisseau kill himself. He will also conclude that he had the impression the magistrate was speaking with Morrisseau's best interests at heart. The jail is a small stone Victorian building shrouded in Gothic shadow, the cells lit by a dangling bulb. Morrisseau tosses in bed for 3 days, sweating alcohol he can almost taste, shaking uncontrollably as though already in the throes of the disease that will later attack his body. All night he moans for the home he abandoned, his wife Harriet and the children. He thinks of his grandfather Potin, his grandmother Veronique clutching her rosary, and jerks himself up when he hears her calling, Norval. But it is only the voices inside his head playing with him, laughing at him, teasing him. He slams his fist down on his pillow and wraps it around his head to try and silence them. A guard appears with soup and a sandwich. The clanking of the cell door electrifies him and makes him crack his teeth together. The food lies in the corner stale and cold until it is taken away. 2 more days pass when he sits up and it is over. On the 6th he tastes his first meal of tomato and macaroni soup, bread and tea, and he now wants to paint again. He asks to speak to the superintendent, who has already conferred with the magistrate. Morrisseau gives the officer a list of supplies: acrylic paint, cadmium yellow, naphthol red, cobalt blue, magenta, burnt sienna, earth green, titanium white, black, 3 brushes, paint, canvas. While waiting, he thinks back to his grandmother and her strict Catholicism, and he turns to the only book in the cell, the Bible. A couple of days later, an officer delivers the supplies. Later, he will trade one of the paintings for them, and he begins to paint furiously. Almost before he begins, he is out of space. The 7 by 10 foot cell is too small. After a visit from the magistrate and more consultation, the superintendent offers him the empty cell beside his own. Morrisseau is now worlds away with his own studio, away from alcohol, painting daily, eating regularly. He hasn't felt this good in years. Feeling the divine rush of creativity surging from the ground through the floor of the cell and up into his body, he begins to do penance. With a stroke of his brush, his religious series takes shape. Portrait of Christ with sacred robes, Joseph with Christ child and St. John the Baptist, Virgin Mary with Christ child and St. John the Baptist become mixed up with with Thunderbirds, first son of the Ojibwe Loon Totemic clan. Ojibwe shaman receives the sacred fire from the 3rd heaven. For Morrisseau, it is the balance between these 2 faiths that he strives to paint, each pulling in opposite directions. So I'm just going to read one last piece here, and it's based on this. It's called Indian Canoe. Behind the blink of a dream, the shaman paints himself into voyage and travels with the people who have been paddling all their lives for centuries back to the source of religion. Mishu Picchu, Water Manitou, spirit guide, swims the underworld, spiraling out of a whirlpool, sign of medicine power and presence, a prayer for calm water. Loon shapes the canoe, an elegant song of loyalty and beauty, head held high to the distant horizon, vigilant for the people. Sturgeon supports the fragile vessel, master of deep water, strength and sweet flesh, given in self-sacrifice, beloved totems. And the four aboard? Man, woman, child, shaman, paddle or brush in hand, painted in red ochre on stone and bound together, transformed innumerable times by innumerable artists so that the people might continue. Thank you.
This is a book you're writing,
Yeah,
so it's not published yet?
it's not published yet. It's not finished yet. One of these days, one of these years. Thank you, Armand.